And I have a few more things to say just making a few connections, basically. And it's just this is just a wee bit of time before we get to the main act, just to consider film as part of literacy learning and those considerations for planning of learning, teaching and assessment. So this is a very familiar box, come from the Literacy Principles and Practice paper, 2010, I believe this is from. And just that whole page about what is meant by texts. And when CFE came in and the literacy E's and O's became our main document, this was quite an important part of it, that idea of texts being more than the written word, the medium through which ideas, experiences, opinions and information can be communicated. And I just picked out these words just to really just for us to consider and how these resonate today. The CFE and the Principles and Practice paper talk about the future-proofing of the curriculum and experiences that we give children and young people. And that the examples of texts, they've maybe changed. There are maybe more that we could add into that now, but not many more. But certainly, though, the technologies that are mentioned there since that time have progressed so far, exponentially, really, since that time. It was just really a quick reminder of that. Next few slides, if I can move this on, are just a bit more of kind of in-depth thinking about how film might factor into your planning and your planning for progression in literacy, really. So I've pulled up this image from the moderation cycle. I know everybody will be very familiar with this image. But for right now, we're just focusing on that stage that I've circled there, that planning, teaching and assessment using the experiences and outcomes in order to meet learners' needs. I've stuck a wee link there also, and we can share these slides later, just to the Moderation Hub, just a reminder that resource is there, and loads of different resources for all stages of the moderation cycle. But for now, let's think about that planning stage, and specifically thinking about that idea of bundling experiences and outcomes and how we might consider film as part of those bundles. So this one here, I stole this from one of the many kind of useful materials within the Moderation Hub about bundling experiences and outcomes. And as you can see, I know that you can read the bullets yourself, but the idea of when you're thinking of bundling, starting from your learners, thinking of their prior learning, that last one there, making clear the links between learning, considering depth, challenge and application, and more about that in a minute. But in the middle, that idea of allowing for depth of learning in an area that is fundamental to supporting new learning. And I just want to take not too long, but just a wee bit of time over the next couple of slides just to tease that out a little bit more. And sketch out that process. So really what's coming next really bears in mind that the experiences and outcomes for literacy are really about if we were to boil it right down, engaging with and creating texts. And as children and young people progress through those levels and between those levels, we know that the texts, those that are engaged with, those that are created, become increasingly complex. So if we're first thinking about that idea of engaging with, here's the beginnings, and this is not anything set in stone or anything, it's a very fluid idea. Your bundle for your class at this time may look very different depending on their needs. But here's just a wee sort of sketch of thinking about film in terms of how that might help progression in reading. So I've picked out understanding, analysing and evaluating in this particular one here. So how can questions to consider? How can film work help us in learning more or learning differently about some of the elements that are up there on the screen? For example, thinking about character, helping us thinking about that understanding of theme. And a conversation that I had with colleagues just before our meeting was really sort of brought home that idea of learning differently. You know, maybe you have been looking at stories or you've been looking at the novels, but the ideas maybe haven't totally sunk in. Film really allows us to look at those aspects in a really different way. What else is in the bundle here? There's experience around, E's and O's there for listening and talking. And really that's just considering the activities that help us get there. With that one might involve watching and listening whilst making notes, for example, or developing understanding, analysis and evaluation through group discussion. So we don't have time to go through the exact wording of what each of those are, and you'll be very familiar with them already, but it's just really to give you that idea of that reciprocity between reading, writing and listening and talking, I guess, but also that idea of how we bundle. Next slide then looks at that creation of text. And here we've got another possibility then for writing. So obviously we're actually talking about filmmaking here. So we're not being so literal with this one, but think about basically replacing what we have here, applying the elements which writers use to create different types of short and extended text. Replace writers with filmmakers and think about the learning and the consolidation, the learning, again, back to that learning differently about those aspects. And again, different aspects of that experience and outcome, the idea of creating short and extended texts, increasingly complex ideas, increasingly complex structures. And I think when you listen to Scott and Gail, you'll really kind of get an idea of where film can take us in those aspects. What else is in this bundle? Well, really, really quickly, I've included a little bit about reading, and that's the one from the previous slide, actually, that understanding, analysis and evaluation, because we would watch in order to create. But also writing's in there, enjoyment and choice, organising and using information, and listening and talking too, because I'm imagining a block of learning where all these aspects would really interplay with each other. So, and I am nearly finished, and I am going to hand on to my colleagues in a second. Kind of pulling it together a little bit and thinking about that golden trio: breadth, challenge and application. When we plan for progression, we plan for breadth, challenge and application. And really, what film, working within the context of film, in those terms, what it allows us to do, well, communicating and collaborating across learning. The film that we work with doesn't necessarily need to fit into that idea of fiction. It could be connected with social studies. It can be connected with any of our curricular areas. That idea of adding in a new, different type of text, we've already talked about that at the beginning of the session. Challenge, well, filmmaking, watching and taking notes on film, for example, really gives us that scope for independence, reducing the level of support, back to that length and complexity of text and task. Really good one in there, the higher order questions and critical skills aspect of that, and that's actually connects to the webinar, our previous webinar that Ailey mentioned when we did the Padlet exercise earlier on. We also have a resource to share with you. Our colleague Julie Jameson will share with you that really does kind of get in and about higher order questioning and critical skills in relation to film. So that we can send that over to you too. And I won't go through every single one, but the application bit's so important. Application is the key, you know, in achievement of a level in particular. And so application of the skills built through engaging with the text, creating film text that may be possibly used to contribute to the life of the school, for example, or as part of IDL as well. so many different possibilities there that we just really wanted you to consider in advance of the next part of the session. I am going to stop. I'll pause for a wee moment. Are there questions or comments from the group at the moment?
Nothing at the moment, Helen.
Yeah, I'm taking that silence as no. Right, fantastic. Okay, over to the exciting stuff. I'm going to move on to and hand over to Scott from Screen Scotland, and he's going to take the next part of the session. So Scott, it's over to you.
Great, thanks very much. Can everybody hear me? I presume you can.
Sounds like yes.
Yeah, good. Okay. I'll just have my camera on for a minute, just so you can see me. It's always nice to see people to begin with, but I'll turn it off in a sec. First thing I wanted to say was an enormous thank you to Helen and colleagues at Education Scotland for the invitation to do this, and also to all of you for pitching up at the end of a long school day to listen to me drone on about film education. We haven't got much time, so let's get on with it. Helen, could you spool forward to about 4 slides? It's almost the same slide as this one. Keep going. That's it. Back one. Okay, so that's us. And now if we go forward to the next one. Lovely. Okay. So I'm head of film education at Screen Scotland, which is part of Creative Scotland, and we're funded by Scottish Government and the National Lottery. And my colleague Gail Robertson is Film Education Officer. We are you've got the whole film education team at Screen Scotland here. We have a budget, we spend it on stuff, and what we're trying to do, that's what we're about, is inspiring and equipping people across Scotland to be able to enjoy, understand, create, explore, and share films in all its forms throughout their lives. That's what we do. How do we do it? We do it particularly by working with other systems, if you like, by trying to promote professional development among teachers, library staff, youth workers, and many others, because we're a small team, we have a small budget, there's a limit to what we can do, and we have to work with the systems that are there already. So we don't do a huge amount of kind of direct delivery or paying for direct delivery to young people. We work with other people who work with young people and with older people. And we get involved in advocacy through Scottish Government, through Education Scotland, SQA, local authorities, regional improvement collaboratives, and so forth. Quick word about what film education is and how we see it. We talk about the 3 C's of film education: the cultural, the critical, and the creative. And what we mean by that is the kind of critical side is that analytical side, the engaging with the text that Helen was talking about just there. The creative side is what it says on the tin, that's making stuff. It need not necessarily mean making a whole film, be that short. It might mean, exactly the kinds of exercises that you would do with, writing and talking, those kinds of, nursery slope activities. It could also mean, storyboarding and exercises like that. And we'll come to some of that later. The cultural C is about expanding the exposure, if you like, of young people to a wider range of texts, a wider range of films. So that's the kind of 3 C's of film education. If you want to know more about that, there'll be a link at the end to the film education framework, the European film education framework, which informs our work. Today's focus is going to be very much on kind of beginner exercises. And having had a look at the Padlet, I'm slightly intimidated. It looks like lots of you are doing quite a lot of stuff already. So apologies in advance if much of this is not new to you. But we needed to start somewhere. And we can go further, and we'd be very happy to do so. And we're also going to focus particularly today simply on the critical and analytical bit, the engaging with texts rather than the creative, although I'll mention some aspects of that. So, one of the key aspects of film is that it's a time-based medium. It keeps going, unlike kind of writing, which sits on the page in front of you and you can go back and forth across it. If you press play on a film, it just keeps going. So what the analytical exercises we're going to look at today are about is trying to stop that machine to see how it functions at word, sentence, and text level. So if we think about that, there's the soundtrack, there's the vision track, and there's the kind of story, the thing as a whole. So it's those three things that I want to look at today. So with sound on, vision off, this is what we asked you to do for homework, was to listen to that sound file and write down everything you hear as precisely as possible in order and think about these questions. Next slide, please. Those questions. Where are we? When's it happening? Who's in it? What's happening? What's the mood and tone? How's it going to end? What genre of film is it? And what does it look like? Just judging from the sound clip. Now, I bet some of you knew what the film was because it's on our Screening Shorts website. So I won't be surprised if some of you know. But what I hope some of you will have done is listen to the thing, think about this, and maybe jot down some answers. The way that I would do this in the classroom or in a training session or whatever would be to play the clip with these questions up on the screen, and then at the end of the clip, split everybody into pairs so that everybody can compare notes. And what happens every time I've done this, and I've done it hundreds of times, the noise level in the room goes through the roof as everybody is engaged and curious because everybody wants to get the answer right and try to work out what it is. It's that kind of curiosity which we bring to films, and any texts come to that, which kind of drives us through the story. And then once you've had a few minutes with the pairs, you then come back into a plenary session. So that's how I would normally do it, but we don't have the time to do it, and we're not in that kind of classroom situation where it would be easy to do. So we've tried to set the thing up beforehand. So what I'm hoping we might do now is move to the chat, or alternatively just turn put your hand up or turn your mic off, turn your mic on, and give us some answers to some of these questions. So let's start with some of the first questions. Where do people think we are? I'll just turn on my chat in case anybody's going to put it in the chat. Where do we think we are? Anybody care to give us some thoughts on that? Who's going to be first? Help me out. It needs to be interactive.
We've got the chats starting to go like a fair, Scott.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
I've gone into the chat and I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, I can come in, and I think Gail's probably want to pitch in as well. So the seaside, fairground, the beach.
Seaside, fairground, the beach. Okay, so on the seaside, why the seaside? Who said that, and why do you say that?
I said the seaside of the beach, just simply because I heard seagulls.
Yeah,
you could hear the water.
Yes,
as if coming in.
Yeah, you could hear the water as well. Somebody said fairground. Why do you think fairground?
You could hear the distant music from kind of fairground.
Yes, good. Any other answers?
You could hear kind of like slot machines. That's what I thought it was as well. Like putting the coin in and then pulling the lever.
Yeah, good. So that's kind of fairground. Good. Okay. Moving on to the when part. When's it happening? Well, sorry, no. Within where? Are we inside or are we outside?
Outside. but then the footsteps indicate that you're moving in.
Yeah, good. Because the sound, bit of feedback coming in there. If you maybe turn your mic off again. So
Can we mute mics, please, if you're not speaking?
great, thank you. You can tell the difference between when you're inside and when you're outside. Of course, when you're watching a film, you know when you're inside or outside because you can see that. But the sound changes as well, and it's about that kind of precision of listening and listening for those changes, and you could hear them in that piece. Okay, moving on then to the when. Is it day or night, past, present, or future? Any thoughts on that? What are we getting? Any thoughts?
Difficult to tell when you're listening.
Yes.
Got people saying past.
I assumed it was daytime because there was noise, quite a lot of noise.
Yeah, good. And yeah, seagulls you normally hear during the day. Slot machine normally a daytime activity.
I'd said maybe that it was in the past because at one point I heard what sounded like a really old car pulling up.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Good. Great. Yeah, it's quite an old-fashioned car sound or whatever it is. Yeah. Great. Okay. Very good. So who's in it? How old are they? Male or female? How many characters? Any thoughts? Somebody come in?
Somebody's saying it sounds like a wee girl.
Sounds like a wee girl. Okay. Now why? What sound was it that made you think that?
The sigh.
I think it was just a wee sigh and just it didn't sound like an older person. It just sounded like a frustrated sigh, someone trying to do something and it's not working properly.
Yeah, great. Okay. And again, it's interesting, isn't it, how the sound of a voice helps us to kind of gauge gender and age, you know. Okay, what's happening? Anybody got any thoughts about that? No.
I assumed that it was a little child as well, but I thought the footsteps were just her wandering about, maybe looking at the fairground and what was going on, and maybe walking past different machines, and I don't know. That's what I could visualize.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's really interesting. One of the kind of really interesting things about this exercise is that, you know, I asked you to write down everything as precisely as you can, but because they're just sounds and music, it's actually quite difficult to verbalize that. It's extremely difficult unless you begin to invent that narrative that goes with the sounds. If you can invent a narrative that goes with the sounds sort of become clearer. You begin to make some sense out of them, or rather you kind of create some sense out of them and begin to create a story out of those sounds. Great. Okay, so just quickly, mood and tone, and how's it going to end? Is it a happy ending, sad ending? You know, what do we think here?
I would say happy ending because of the music that comes on at the end. It's quite cheery.
Yes, good. Any other thoughts about the music and the tone through the film?
There was a change in the mood, a change in the atmosphere. I've written down the music almost sounded a bit like sinister. I don't know. There was a definite change, and then at the end again, it seemed to go back, and you felt as though you were reaching a conclusion, and it was a happier one.
Yeah, great.
So definite change.
Yeah, exactly so. There's in the middle, you've got tension, you've got the cello, and then we come back to the kind of happy sounds at the end. That's great. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint, and can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so you know, obviously the purpose of this exercise is to really focus on sound and really focus on listening. And as you go through these questions with the class, you want to keep saying, as I did, you know, why do you say that? What makes you say that? Because you're asking people to focus, you know, kind of quite forensically on sound and the nature of sound and what sound tells you. And through that exercise, what do we learn about sound? Can we have the next slide, please? So you can think about sound as kind of three channels, if you like: dialogue, music, and sound effects. When you're choosing your sound on, vision off clip, you want to choose clips without dialogue, because words will kind of anchor the meaning very much. You want to use just music and sound effects clips as that piece was. Sometimes people talk about a fourth element of sound, which is silence, which also kind of signifies, particularly in things like horror films. And, you know, one of the key things about sound is that it carries a lot more information than you think, and it also carries a huge emotional weight. It really guides your emotional response to the film. You all know how, you know, kind of weepy music gets you when, you know, there's a weepy moment in a movie. Okay, let's move on. So, no, the one before? Great. So that was looking at sound. Now, how do we analyze visuals, and how do we go about that? Next slide. Okay. So we asked you we would ask you to draw a storyboard of a sequence. Now, the way to do this is to use that pause function. Choose a sequence, and we'll go through the kind of how you would choose a sequence to draw a storyboard of it in a moment from Archie. But one of the things to be thinking about here is very often you'll see in lots of guides to doing film education, you'll see, you know, guides to shots and what they mean. So, you know, a close-up or an extreme close-up, a low angle or a high angle. And there'll be interpretations of what a high angle shot means. You know, it makes the character small, or a low angle, you know, the character looms over the camera so they look powerful and frightening, and all the rest of it. And there is a lot of truth to all of that. But the point about film is that it's not a series of still images. It's sequences of images that work together. And it's the way each shot is set up by the shot before, and the way it's answered by the shot that comes after. So looking at how shots work together in sequence is what's really important. So the way I would do this exercise normally in the class would be to identify the kind of sequence that enables you to identify particular aspects of how sequences work and how shots work together. And then, you know, using the pause function, give out a storyboard blank and get people to, you know, you only give them like a minute, 90 seconds, a couple of minutes to jot down, to draw each frame in the storyboard. And it's really good for looking. It's good for looking at the edges of the frame and seeing how a picture is framed and what's in it and what's not in it. So next slide, please. I would normally do a sequence of about 6 to 8 shots, but because the first sequence of Archie is 10 shots, we've got the whole lot here. So I might even start at shot 2, you know, asking students to start with shot 2 and to draw that, and then move on to these next shots. And if you could, Helen, just show the next one. and then have a look at that. And then, so that's the whole of the first sequence. And we then go to black and they're off in the train. So if you could go back to the first sequence, the first set. That's it. Yeah, great. So you'd be asking them to draw this. Now, why would you draw this? And when they've done that, you would then talk through the storyboards that they've got, probably with either one you drew earlier on the board or with this storyboard that you've done using screenshots. So the kinds of things you're going to talk about here are the variety of shots. So, you know, your kind of medium close-ups in shot 4 and 5, you know, the wider shots in shot 3, and the way that, you know, shot 3, for example, that's the first shot you get of the whole room. So it gives you that whole kind of mise en scène, if you like, of the whole thing, and you're in their space now, and you've got a really good sense of the space that they live in, and who they are, and the kinds of, you know, what they're doing. They're having breakfast, and the poster's come in, and he's going to open the post, and his name is Archie because it's on the letter, and so on and so forth. And we then move into the you know, the kind of action, you know, the story gurus call the inciting incident, which is the notice that his auntie's died. Okay, and so there's something very special about shot 6. I don't know if anybody would care to stick in the chat what's special about shot 6. I'll just wait a moment and see if anybody wants to stick that in. If somebody who's watching the chat could call out anything that comes through.
Mr. Stevenson has put something. I don't know if you want to unmute.
Hi, Helen.
Yeah.
Put that in. Yeah, kind of point of view shot.
Exactly. It's a point of view shot. And how do we know it's a point of view? Mr. Stevenson.
Sorry, I left myself on mute there. I don't know. I guess because we've already seen what he's got in his hand. I guess there's something about the previous shot informs it, right? So he's holding the key and the letter, and then we're seeing through his eyes the things we know he's holding. We can see his hand and stuff like that, I guess, as well.
Indeed. There's 2 clues in shot 6. Firstly, we can see his hands, and it's obviously from his angle. But it's also because in the shot before, he's looking at that staff. And could we say the same about shot 5? Is that a point of view shot? Anybody?
Yeah, from the dog's point. Yeah, from the little dog's point of view, possibly. Yeah.
Exactly, because in the shot before we've seen what Archie. Sorry, I keep thinking the white dog is Archie, but he's not. It's the brown dog who's Archie. Yeah. So the West Highland White or whatever he is, he's looking at Archie. So shot 5 is a point of view shot from the dog's perspective, and shot 6 is point of view from Archie's perspective. Let's have a look at the next lot, can we? Okay, so no, the one before. So shot 7A, what is that? So he's weeping now. This is his response to what he's just seen. It's what's often called a reaction shot, okay? So the creation of point of view is really, really important in film. And it took several years from the invention of film for them to work out how to do that. And this is typically how point of view is created. Character looks, you see what they look at, you get their reaction. There are different ways of spinning it. You can get character looks, you get their reaction, which incites your curiosity as to what's made them so afraid or interested, and then you see what they're looking at and so forth. There are other ways of creating point of view, like handheld camera and other particular aspects. But the most common way of creating it is character looks. You see what they look at, reaction shot. And point of view is obviously really, really important for viewer identification and sympathy with characters. So that's really, really important. One of the kind of really important aspects of film grammar to kind of learn. His second reaction in shot 7B is to look aside, and shot 8 is another kind of point of view where he reaches for what he was obviously looking at in 7B, which is the picture on the shelf. And then we come back out to that wider shot, only we're a bit closer in shot 9 of the kind of breakfast room, and he pins the house on the map. And so that's how that kind of sequence works. So you can use that to begin to show how a simple action like letter arrives, informing of bereavement, and that's it really. But that gives you all that kind of characterization and emotion in that sequence of images. Okay, so let's move on quickly. 1 minute. Oh, there's a storyboard blank. So that's the kind of thing that you can use for this exercise. And of course, the boxes underneath where the numbers are is for you to write down, notes, stage directions, dialogue, music, sound effects, etc., which you can add in later. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that was looking at sound and vision, and those are the kind of specific filmic aspects of how you tell stories. They're the narration, they're how you narrate in film. Now let's think about how to analyze the story, the kind of whole text analysis. Next slide, please. So some of you noted in the Padlet that you've been doing this stuff already. So this is adapted from Aidan Chambers' work on how to work with children to get them to talk about written stories. And this has been adapted by the BFI and ourselves and others into this kind of analysis for films. So you draw a cross on the board and, 2 P's, 2 S's, similarities, surprises, puzzles and patterns. Let's just talk about what these mean. So similarities is about what the film reminds you of. What other films does it remind you of? Songs or books or plays or jokes or incidents in your life or whatever. Because all stories depend on the kind of cultural baggage that we bring to them. We wouldn't understand them, if we didn't know that, if we didn't know that, dogs are pets and they didn't actually have cups of tea and all the rest of it, and it wouldn't be so cute kind of thing, and it would just look a bit odd. But, we've seen other films before which are anthropomorphic and so on and so forth. So, so it's about showing how texts depend on other texts and other aspects of our cultural lives. Surprises are things that happen in the story that you weren't expecting. We all know that if you know exactly what's going to happen all the time in a story, it's boring. You've got to have surprises. Having that kind of killer surprise ending or whatever is what story writers dream of. So when you get to the creative part, how are people going to build those surprises in? Puzzles are different to surprises in that it's about, well, I don't get why so-and-so did such and such in the film. Why was that? Sorry, I'm getting and that's quite good for, when you rehash the, when you go to the plenary and discuss people's responses, that's really good for unpicking those kind of uncertainties in the text and perhaps dissonances in the text where stuff doesn't quite match up, where you know, why did in Lucky Dip, which is the sound file you had, which is on Screening Shorts, and I would recommend you have a look at it. In Lucky Dip, why does the Pin Man hide? It doesn't make sense given the story. And then finally, patterns. What patterns and repeated motifs did you notice? So this in film texts is going to be what visual things repeat, what oral things repeat. You know, are characters associated with particular pieces of music, for example, and so on and so forth. Because what these patterns do is they help us to interpret the story, and they give it that kind of aesthetic richness and engagement that we're interested in. And you know, you can play this in any kind of way. You know, you can split the team up into 4, and you know, one group does similarities, another does surprises or whatever, or you can just have little groups doing the whole lot, and then, you know, mark it all up on the board afterwards. I'm sure you can all work out the different ways you might do this exercise. So we were thinking about doing a breakout on this, but I don't think we will, because I know I need to finish any minute. But just to pick up on a kind of few things, I wanted to sort of emphasize that we're talking here, you know, this is about the kind of analytical and critical stuff. And with the 3 C's, what we're hoping to achieve is to, as it were, be on a bit of a roundabout, where you're moving on from critical exercises to creative exercises and cultural exercises and back again to creative and critical, and you're not just doing the analytical stuff, you're not just doing the creative stuff, but that they're all kind of intertwined. So you know, you can think of all kinds of things that you might do creatively after doing these critical exercises. So for example, you know, you might do the sound on, vision off exercise, and you go through the answers everybody's got, and many students will have kind of got a half worked out story from the sounds that they've heard. So you could then go, okay, well, develop that story, you know, complete that story, or write the first scene, or whatever. You can withhold actually showing the film. They will kill you if you don't show the film, but it might be fun to try it. On the storyboard exercise, you know, kind of another example, you know, you'll have done other work on the film and you'll have done the storyboard exercise. Then, you know, in Archie, for example, okay, so I have to say, you know, this is the company, the Scottish company, the production company is based on Sky, actually. The animator came from Edinburgh College of Art. They're hoping to make this into a series for CBBC. And one of the things I have to ask you is, please send us or Helen or whoever emails saying, please, can you make more, you know, if you like Archie and you'd like to see more Archie, you tell us. And you tell us how your children would like it. And we'll tell CBBC and tell them to get on commissioning the rest of the series. So what happens next? What do Archie and his dog do next in that house? They've done the storyboard exercise. They've worked that out. Okay, so what's the first scene when they wake up when, you know, after okay, so the storm's gone, sun's come out, they've got the picture now. They're in the house that Auntie had. What are they going to do next? Are they going to, are they going to clean the house? What are they going to do now that they're in that house? And you can say, okay, so storyboard the first sequence, and you must have a point of view shot in it. So you're beginning to build creative exercises out of the analytical exercises. So I'm sorry, I'm going to stop now and pass over to Gail. And I'm sorry that, we've had to, it's been a bit of a kind of truncated and schematic introduction to these kind of exercises. But I did want to try and get through the whole lot to show that there's there's the sound, there's the vision, and there's the story. And there's 1,000,001 exercises you can do on sound, vision, and story. But I wanted to show some of the kind of beginning exercises that you can do. So I'm now going to hand over to Gail.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Scott. And apologies if I got a bit behind in the chat. At times, it was brilliant. There were just so many pinging in, and then my notifications were getting in the way, so I was got into a bit of a fankle. But it's brilliant to see everyone's ideas, and yeah, they're all really great. So I'm just going to finish off the last few minutes to tell you a little bit more about sort of the resources and what we have to offer you, I guess. And sorry, bear with me, I need to just grab my little page of notes. Here we are. So as you can see here, we've got sort of film education resources. We're not like into film, we don't have millions of them. They're pretty much all developed by myself and Scott. And so there's just the two of us, so it takes a wee while to get things together. But what we have done with our resources and made sure that where possible they've been really teacher-led and really teacher-centric both from teaching backgrounds. Scott was primary, I was secondary English and media, and I was teaching up until September, so it's all very fresh. And so we're really using our sort of knowledge from that background to make sure that what we create is pertinent and it's going to be really useful in the classroom. So we've got quite a few resources we're constantly working on, more particularly ones that are designed more for filmmaking, because I know that's an area that people have a lot of nervousness around. So watch this space, hopefully we'll have those together soon enough. So just walking through the little options we've got there. So screening shorts, that's something I've just been updating and using that up. So if you've used screening shorts before, we've given it a little polish and added some new resources and things on there. So that's got lots of short films on it, resources, some good sort of starting points and some background information if you're new to using film in classroom. And with anything on there, please, any feedback that you can give us is more than welcome. We're always wanting to make sure that everything's is clear and as useful as possible. Languages on screen is very similar, but that one's more tailored towards modern languages. So it's all films in French, German, Spanish, and Italian, with some resources on there as well. But there's also some good just general film skill resources in there too. So it's always worth checking out if you just want to learn a little bit more about editing in general or about the use of exploring screen narrative. It would be in there as well. The two I'd really like to draw your attention to just now are two quite new developments that we've been working on in the last few months, which is our team within Teams and our Glow page, are sort of within the professional learning community. And what we've got in there, we've been posting lots of resources. There are more resources on Teams and Glow than there are on Screening Shorts at the moment. So loads of resources, including one that I've put together for Archie, because the response that we've had from people from Archie has been so good. Everyone that I've spoken to just loved it. So we've put a resource together for, it's a very first level. Primary is not my field, so it might be a little bit off course at points, but I think I've just about got it right. We also every Friday post a link to a new short film, and where possible provide some resources for that as well. You'll also find, if you're interested in your film education, some research, competitions, events, details. And we really want it to be a network where people can share and collaborate. I'm checking time and I'm realising I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. The contact details at the bottom. Please get in touch with us. We're always up for a chat and looking to work together. We really want to get to know teachers and learn from you guys and let you guys lead what we do where possible, because you're the ones in the classroom, you know what you need. And if we just pop onto the next slide, last little thing I want to say, is, excuse me, is, sorry, could you get the next slide up?
Is it there, Gail?
Okay, thank you. That's it now. Sorry, I think it was a wee bit behind. So this is our little free gift for you today. This is a resource, just introduction to film education. It looks a little different now because I've given it a little polish up this week, so it's looking a wee bit nicer now. But all that's in there is all the resources from today, all the kind of skills from today's session, the Tell Me Grid, the sound on vision of the storyboarding and sequencing, the sort of background and are in there. There's loads of other suggested activities tying into the critical, cultural and creative approach that we talked about. A lot of them are adapted from screening shorts, so you'll find some, they'll work together really nicely. And particularly, I'd like to draw your attention to we've got all the BGE focused on literacy just for a starting point, but all the literacy levels, what we've done is highlighted where those E's and O's are covered in activities and suggested activities that help you achieve them. And like I say, there's loads of overlap. You'll find that loads of the resources that are in the PowerPoint there will help you get all those E's and O's. I lost my thread a little bit towards the end because people are pinging comments, and that's brilliant. I think that's us out of time, so I'll stop and hand over to Helen, but I'll still be on the chat, so if anyone wants to ask me any questions or ask Scott any questions, then just fire them in there.
Thanks so much, Gail and Scott. I think it's always a good sign when the chat pane starts filling up with love hearts, not just thumbs, but love hearts. And I think I get the sense that a lot of people have really enjoyed the session, really enjoyed it, as I certainly have. And hope that folk take this a little bit further, which leads me back to what I was saying about our extended evaluation. We have our standard evaluation, which we really would love you to fill in because it gives us the feedback that we need on how good we found the session, what kinds of sessions you would like in the future, but also that extended option is there. That what, so what, now what kind of action planning, thinking forward. And if you do opt for this, we would like to be able to contact you in 6 months' time just to see how it's going, how you're getting on with this. I think we will wrap it up there. We are coming up to time. It's been fantastic to have so many colleagues join us after a busy day at school, near the end of the week, no less. Friday tomorrow, which is great news. And as we're closing, I just want to say again an enormous thank you to Scott and to Gail for your input today. I think it's been fantastic. And I think colleagues, I can see from the chat that colleagues are saying the same. And we will leave it there and we will say cheerio.
Helen, just before you go, someone's asked if it would be possible to share the resources from tonight with wider networks. So that question is gone for Gail.
Yes, hi, sorry. I can't keep up every time I try and reply. My notification box gets in my way and I can't type. So apologies to everyone that I'm not responding to. I'm trying so hard. But yes, absolutely. Please share as far and wide as you can. That's absolutely brilliant. Go for it. And yes, like I say, I'm sorry if there's any other questions that have come up that I've missed, but the response has been so brilliant, I can't keep up, which is a lovely thing to be able to say.
Yes.
Also, Mrs. Ferry, I need to say to Mrs. Ferry that P1 to P3 films, that's actually gone now, so bad news about that. But I can certainly give you some recommendations of films that would be good for certain levels if you would give me a wee email. But yeah, sorry, that slide that you got excited about is not on it anymore.
Great. Okay. Any last words from Scott or from Gail as we kind of bring this to a close?
No, just to say thanks ever so much. I'm sorry I can't see the chat, and but I hope that I'll get a digest of it later on. Yeah, you
will. Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic. Right. Thank you all. Looking forward to hearing your responses to the evaluation. We will send that link out in a follow-up email as well if you want a wee bit more time to ponder, as you may. At the end of a busy day. So, thank you all. Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.